Welcome to Juneau Afternoon, broadcasting live from the homelands of the Occoquan and on demand as a podcast. It's Thursday, July 23rd, 2026. I'm your host, Boston Christopher. Chi, Shawa, Tux, Gnusum, Salamat. Thank you for joining the conversation. You can also join us via our live stream on KTOO's YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram pages. Wherever you are, that's where we are. Today, we visit with Chancellor of the University of Alaska Southeast, Dr. Aparna Palmer, to chat fall course highlights, new programs, and more. We hear an extended interview from KTOO's Mike Lane with Geoff and Marcy Larson of Alaska Brewing as they celebrate 40 years of beer making. And we talk with Joyce Parry-Moore, former Juneauite, company member of Perseverance Theater and founder of Opera to Go. She has a new book, Fill the Room, an invitation to take up space, and will have an event and book signing here in town on August 7th. Those conversations are coming up this hour on Juneau Afternoon. And a quick programming note, Juneau Afternoon will be on a summer hiatus after this week's shows from July 27th through August 14th. Our live shows will resume on Wednesday, August 19th. We are grateful for your continued support and look forward to sharing more stories, people, and events with you upon our return. Support for Juneau Afternoon comes from Heritage Coffee Roasting Company, providing Juneau with locally roasted coffee for over 40 years, with cafes and drive-through locations throughout Juneau. More at heritagecoffee.com. Support for Juneau Afternoon comes from Emil Mackey at Country Financial, offering insurance for home, auto, and business, and life insurance to protect your family in case of death. Located in the Juneau Nugget Mall. More information can be found online or by calling 907-500-7017. You are listening to community-supported Juneau Afternoon on KTOO 104.3 Juneau, 91.7 Juneau Auk Bay, and online at ktoo.org. I'm Boston Christopher. You can also join us on our live stream on KTOO's YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram pages. The University of Alaska Southeast continues to expand, grow, and receive accolades for students and faculty alike. I am joined now by Chancellor Dr. Aparna Palmer to look ahead to the fall with some new programs and partnerships and to celebrate new investments and faculty accolades. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here, Dr. Palmer. How are you?
I'm good, and for having me here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see you. It's been a while. We've had a lot of university stuff. We've had our scientists on. We've talked a little bit about the GLOF that's going to be happening here soon, the Glacial Lake outburst flooding. We've had other programs on. We've been highlighting some things. We've had Lance Twitchell on to talk about the new program. We're going to mention that again today. We've had EDA on talking a little bit about Indigenous language. It's just been a pleasure to have all of the University of Alaska Southeast folks come on the air and chat. But it's always nice to go to the top, as it were, and have you on the show and to talk about everything that's going on. So we're here in, almost August, which means campus kickoff coming up soon and fall courses. What do we got going on? What do we want to talk about with the fall?
Yeah, we are so excited about fall. I've spent my whole life my whole life in school, essentially, because after I finished as a student, I then became a professor and then just continued on. And so every single fall is so exciting. It just gives me goosebumps to really welcome students back for another year. And so we are excited as always. We are especially excited about career ed. We have actually a new dean of career ed. She joined us midsummer, and she is really busy getting to know career ed, our tech center, and just making sure that we have a good slate of classes to offer.
What is career ed? What does that mean?
So career ed is also known as career and technical education, or CTE. So this is really those fields that are very hands-on. They require a lot of technical skill, but it's a different form of skill than in other disciplines. You know, all of us know someone who is brilliant at taking things apart and putting them back together, at creating things three-dimensionally. And this is the area for them. And
I'm really good at taking things apart. It's putting them back together.
Oh.
Yeah, but maybe I could take a class and learn a little something. That'd be kind of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we have our courses in construction technology, including Woodworking 1 and Woodworking 2, light wood frame construction, AutoCAD, things like that. Again, really hands-on, amazing. You know, we know how powerful it is to be able to physically interact with knowledge and physically create things, in addition to all the amazing things that our minds do. And this celebrates that.
Cool.
We also have our welding courses, both basic and advanced. And then, of course, we have our diesel tech courses, which leads into amazing careers, whether you go into the marine field or whether you go into mining. Diesel technology is really, really valued.
And are they still offering some of those courses to the high school students where they can like cross the bridge and go to the tech center over there here on Egan?
Yes, they are. So we are really, really grateful to our mining companies who are our supporters, who have really provided a pathway for students to get started in their careers in diesel technology or mining, but also having pathways in environmental sciences because they employ environmental scientists and geologists. So even in high school, you can get started on those pathways. You just need to speak with your counselor who can connect you with our dual enrollment coordinator.
Absolutely. That's cool. Okay. Yeah. What else is on tap for the fall?
Well, so before I kind of leave fall, I want to say that fall courses, our semester begins on August 24th.
Oh, okay. Not after Labor Day, before Labor Day.
Yeah, and so it's not too late to register for courses or even to apply to be in a program at UAS. So,
and of course, I think we've mentioned this before, but UAS is open enrollment. Anybody can go. So you just have to apply and you can figure out which programs might be right for you.
Yes, that's really important. You know, I am a mission-driven person. I am in this field because I really believe in the power of education and that education should be accessible to everyone. And so open enrollment means that no matter who you are, there is a place for you to start your education at UAS.
Yeah, that's great. That's so great. Yeah.
Well, another thing I'm excited about, and I know you've talked to a couple of people already about this. This is the Master of Arts in Teaching Indigenous Languages.
Oh, this is such a great thing. When Juneau was on earlier this year, it hadn't been approved yet. It was in the process of like potentially being approved, but he was so excited about it. And he was telling us all about it and how it came to be. And so tell me a little. Now it's approved.
It is approved. Our Board of Regents has approved it, and we can start offering classes this fall.
Excellent.
So this it really is an amazing way to really immerse yourself in revitalization of our precious languages that are here because of our indigenous peoples. And so it's a chance to become an educator, but learn how to teach those languages to K through 12 students.
This is so great because, I mean, everything begins with education, right? Like having this program to teach people how to teach the language is just amazing. And this is a master's degree, right? So this is a master's degree in teaching indigenous languages.
Yes.
Okay.
And so you would pursue it after finishing a bachelor's degree. But let's say you're working on, your language acquisition right now. You're working towards finishing out a bachelor's degree. Now is the time to start thinking about that next step, because if you love the indigenous language that you're learning, this is a chance to really share that knowledge. And it's so important to preserve our languages. So you could share that knowledge as a trained teacher.
And is this different than the master's teaching program that you have at UAS? How do they compare, or are they complementary in some way?
So we have a variety of masters in teaching, education at UAS. This is just very specialized.
Okay.
This is for people who are fluent in Indigenous languages. And it's not just Indigenous languages of Southeast Alaska. It's for anyone in Alaska who speaks an Indigenous language.
Oh, cool.
And in fact, anyone in the country who speaks an Indigenous language. This teaches them how to teach it. And in addition, as they go through the program, they become fully certified and fully licensed to be a teacher in Alaska. So no matter where you are, if your dream is to teach in Alaska and teach an Indigenous language, this is a program for you.
And so this is the first semester of it this fall.
We are just now admitting students.
Oh,
so
wow.
we
That's
admit
so cool.
students, and then, it's the beginning.
That's so cool. That's great. That's what I'm talking about with this growth, and especially in terms of the Indigenous languages, the amount of offerings that you all have there in that, and the professors that you have there to keep this growing and making it possible for people to learn the language. It's just so great.
Oh my gosh, it makes such a difference in the world to save our languages, to watch them grow, to see them flourish, to hear them spoken around you. And so I would like nothing better than to play a role as a university in creating that future.
That's awesome. Well, good. Geez, for having that there. So let's talk more. What else we got? I know we got some partnerships happening.
Yeah, I'm excited because this is a partnership that allows students in Alaska who are at UAS to receive a law degree.
Oh, wow.
So, as you probably know, we don't have a law school in Alaska. And so most people have to basically go out of Alaska, go to law school, and then if they want to come and practice in Alaska, then they return to Alaska. This enables students in two different pathways to stay in Alaska and work on becoming a lawyer.
Oh, wow. Okay. How does that work?
So this is a partnership with the Mitchell-Hamline School of Law, and there are a couple of different pathways. So one pathway is called the direct admissions pathway. And what happens there is, as you're working on your degree at UAS, as you reach close to the end of it, based on how your GPA is and what your LSAT score is, and an LSAT is just a standardized test that you take to get entry into law school, you can, if you meet those minimum qualifications, you can be automatically accepted to Mitchell-Hamline.
Oh, wow.
And you qualify for a tuition scholarship that will cover at least 50% of the cost of law school. So
Wow.
It's a great pathway. And usually people apply before May 1st of the year that they intend to begin their legal studies.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So thinking about it for next year at this point, probably for some people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always need to think a year ahead whenever you're thinking about these programs.
That's so cool to have access to a law degree from Alaska.
Well, and there's some other cool things about it, but I want to give you the other pathway. The other pathway I'm really excited about, it's called the 3+3 pathway. So if you are currently pursuing an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree at UAS, you can enter Mitchell-Hamline as you are pursuing your undergraduate degree. And so you would then graduate simultaneously with a undergraduate degree from UAS and a law degree from Mitchell-Hamline in just 6 years. Normally, that would take about 7 years minimum, but they just, that 3+3 program lets you kind of enroll at Mitchell-Hamline and count their courses towards your undergraduate degree and towards the law degree.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
I
really
am
cool.
very excited about that. I think law is a really important profession here in Alaska, and in fact, a law degree doesn't necessarily mean that you become a lawyer. There are so many other positions that you can occupy that aren't lawyers, but really use that background.
But again, it's about access, right? It's about
Yeah.
access and being able to get that here in Southeast, being able to have access to that kind of a program. And that's available through the university. That's really cool. Yeah. What about this behavioral health program investment? I know we had some people on to talk about this a little bit. Tell me a little bit about this.
So, just very recently we started an integrative behavioral health program. Yeah. And we have a variety of different credentials that we offer through it. But thankfully, through advocacy from our federal relations team, particularly Senator Lisa Murkowski, we will be receiving money to support getting these behavioral health specialists into the workforce. And so in particular, the funding will really help us expand our chemical dependency courses and our ability to place students in practicums. The program is also interesting because we can expand our coursework on holistic and family-centered approaches. And then finally, we are working on micro-credentials and certificates that include Indigenous health and healing. So it's such a great perspective, especially for this area, because we get to use the knowledge and wisdom of Indigenous peoples and bring it in and allow that integrative behavioral health degree to give the practitioner all of these different types of resources and approaches that they can draw from to help individuals with their behavioral health.
I'm talking with Chancellor Dr. Aparna Palmer from the University of Alaska Southeast. You can find everything at uas.alaska.edu, all these different programs and things that we're talking about. We did have the Indigenous Health and Healing folks on a couple weeks ago, and there's also dual enrollment for that. There was a course that they were offering that was going to be coming up soon, like it's happening like the next week or something. It's going to be really cool. So teaching the students and as well as college students in terms of these courses and getting the learning in that area, which is just so cool and so expansive, which I love. And then so finally today, just wanted to shout out these couple of professors that got some cool fellowships. Just mention these real briefly for us. Who got these and what are they?
Okay, so this is the Arctic Leadership Initiative, and it is part of the University of Alaska and very, very generously funded by the Rasmussen Foundation. So this is an initiative that prepares students, faculty, and partners to lead in Arctic disciplines. We are the only Arctic state. And it is natural that we should be growing Arctic leaders. Like the next generation of Arctic leaders, they should come from Alaska. And this is an initiative that really grows them. So each year, there is an early career award, and then there is the President's Arctic Professor. And so these awards are given at each of the University of Alaska universities. And for UAS, this year's President's Arctic Professor is Dr. Aaron Hood. As you know, he's a professor of environmental science, and he has done so much for this community relating to GLOF. And so we are so proud of him, and he will continue to contribute, and this will help him contribute. So for 2 years, he gets funding to expand strategic partnerships, build community engagement, and really mentor emerging leaders.
That's awesome.
The Early Career Fellow has been awarded to Xiaofei Song. She is an assistant professor of communication, and what she studies is how Alaska's seasonal workforce navigates career decision-making and how these can impact workforce policy development. So she looks at it from a different perspective, the workforce in Arctic and near Arctic environments. What happens there? How does it impact policy?
That's so amazing. Well, congratulations to those professors for their awesome work and their investment in all of those fields. It's so important to our community. And Dr. Aparna Palmer, thank you so much for catching us up on everything going on with the University of Alaska Southeast. And next time we will be talking about velvet worms for sure. The Anicochorans. I've done some homework. We have an ongoing relationship talking about all these little microbes, these little pieces, these little tiny little things, but they're so important to evolution and all the study because you're a marine biologist, and I love that about you. So
well, the cryptic creatures of the world are fascinating, and I'm glad that you are as fascinated as I am.
I think they're amazing. I don't know. I'm not going to ever study them, but I love hearing about them from you, and we'll do that next time. But Gunath Chish for being here. I really appreciate it.
Gunath Chish,
thank you so much. Okay, so now in the 1980s, Geoff and Marcy Larson were working in different industries. Geoff was a chemical engineer and worked in a gold mine. Marcy was an accountant and had her sights set on becoming a bush pilot. But they had a common love of beer. KTOO's Mike Lane recently visited with the Larsons to get the story on how the Alaska Brewing Company was born 40 years ago and how it has grown since then.
Brewing beer as a home brewer was real fun. We had a number of times when we at our little apartment on Douglas, I would make the beer and then put it in the yard and bury it to keep it cool so that it would ferment at cool temperatures. And it was actually kind of an interesting transition from thinking about chemical engineering, because I worked in a gold mine here in Juneau back in the 80s. During that period, we still were looking at maybe possibly working together. And
Geoff and I wanted to work together. That was the big thing. And his chemical engineer background and my paperwork background actually went well together to kind of put together the brewery idea.
And we both worked long, hard hours because we're pretty dedicated. I think we came from a family that had parents that did the same. So we loved working, but also we really enjoyed each other's company, and we had shared bits of enjoyment out there, whether it be camping, hiking, and having a beer.
And we both love beer, so that helped.
That helps. What was the state of breweries in Alaska and around the country at the time that you were thinking of starting one, and what made you think that you could succeed at this?
Well, the state of breweries, actually in Alaska, there were none at the time. There had been a very large one called Prinsbrow that had started up north in Anchorage in the 70s, but had gone under fairly quickly. And they had spent millions to make that work, and it didn't work. And so that was our first kind of like, I guess we better check this out and see if this is going to work for us. But in the 80s, the craft brewing group was starting to go. It was just starting to take off. It was very early in its day. And we met a number of craft brewers in the lower 48 that were very encouraging, and the big brewers were really encouraging. So we loved the industry because it wasn't cutthroat. It was very honorable, and their big thing was just make good beer. So it was, and they were very helpful. And Alaska didn't have a brewery, and we were drinking a lot of old beer up here because, of course, when things went out of code and they shipped it up north to Alaska, nobody shipped it back. So there was quite a bit of old beer up here. We thought, we need to have some fresh beer in Alaska.
Financially, how did you make starting a brewery work?
Well, I think initially we approached banks, and banks were actually not very forthcoming as far as financing. We ended up discovering that we really had to start looking at raising money. Our family was not interested in investing. We were on our own. So we started talking to people, and whether it be Chamber of Commerce or Rotary Club, we would start talking to people about this idea. And so
we put together a prospectus to be able to raise the money. And figured it all out, and an actual business plan and everything, and then set about selling shares and raising money to start it.
So in reality, what started out as maybe being hopeful that we'd see one or two or three banks help, or one or two or three large investors, turned out to be lots of investors.
And 88 small investors, all the way from Ketchikan to Kotzebue. So this was a full statewide adventure.
From Yukon Charlie to
everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
it was amazing. It was amazing. It took us a year to raise that, and all small investors, but everybody was just super wonderful, supportive, wanted to see something good happen. Not all of them drank beer even, but they just wanted to see economic good things happen in Alaska. And at the time,
this is the 80s, so the interest rates were 12, 13, 14% at the bank. I mean, it was a different era. Also, there was a real flux within the state of Alaska. Things have been winding down. There was quite a bit of economic dread. I think here in Juneau there was a capital move potential, and People were looking at maybe spending a whole bunch of money that the state didn't have. So it was a very unsettling time, and I think people really wanted the
Something
joy
positive.
and the excitement of, oh my God, this sounds like a great idea.
It's a great idea.
Yes,
You got to do it.
I want a part of it.
So was there ever a time where you went, this is just absolutely crazy, we're nuts, what are we doing here?
I have been asked, what did it take to start the brewery? And I think I started saying this over and over again. It took a lot of naivete.
We didn't
You have
know
to be
what
naive.
we were doing. We didn't know what we were getting into.
Oh, my God.
That was a big part.
Secondly, you have to have a stubbornness, because you reach impasse, a problem, and you have to plow through how are we going to deal with this?
And it's constant. It's
And
always
then,
something.
you okay, fine. Okay, you
All the
overcame that hurdle. And then you have to have a short memory. So those are the three things. The short memory is that, okay, now we're over the worst of it.
You said
then-
that before, but
then
you
you
don't remember
repeat.
that.
Naivete, problem solving, stubbornness,
memory.
and yeah.
What was the original name of the brewery, and what was the inspiration of that name?
The original name of the brewery was Chinook Alaskan Brewing and Bottling Company. So it was Chinook Alaskan. There was a Chinook on top of the Alaskan logo as it is today. And that was because of the king salmon, it was native language. There was just a lot
Trading
of
language.
different, it was just a lot of different connections to Alaska and kind of what we wanted to see in the name.
So why transition to Alaskan Brewery?
Well, actually, there was a winery in Washington called Chinook, and they did not like us using that name. And so they sued us and actually served us papers on Christmas Eve, of all things, because you had 10 days to respond, and it was the worst Christmas ever. But anyway, it was a hard one, but in the end, we just took Chinook off and left it Alaskan Brewing and Bottling Company, and it was probably the best thing we ever did, because it's turned out to be such a positive, powerful name that really does encompass the whole state, which is what we were after all along.
Our investors were from the entire state,
So
our
we wanted
customers,
it-
and there's no question.
And no one
Alaska-
else knew what a Chinook was, where everyone knows Alaskans. So,
Sure.
So that worked out. In the end, it worked out really well, but it was quite painful.
Alaskan Brewing, it's 40 years old this year, and it's grown a lot in those 40 years. So how would you describe the evolution of Alaskan Brewing Company?
Well, when we started out with just five employees, it started small, and we had a 10-barrel brew house. We're in the same exact footprint that we were, as far as the original brewery is still in the brewery that's out at Lemon Creek now, and we've just basically added on as we've gone. But our crew has just been the brewing staff and the people that we've worked with. Our coworkers have been awesome, and they're all so energetic, and they're all so enthusiastic. And that's what grew the brewery. Really, was the people that worked there. It was fun. We loved to do new things. We loved to try something out. It was popular. And the craft brewing movement took off at the same time. So it was a combination of a number of things that happened. And I think one milestone along the way was we had the opportunity to sell our beer in Washington, and we had started selling our beer in Washington, and it was crazy because we couldn't keep up. And in the summer times, we would run out of beer, and that's not a good thing. So we were cutting off folks in Washington. It's like, we can't do it. We can't keep up. So the decision was, and at that time, we were just finally turning a profit. We finally made it over the hump, and we were moving forward. And we went to our investors and said, hey, if we're going to keep going, we have to put in a larger brew house, which means an investment. What should we do here? We'd like to have all of our staff, our employees, make the decision on whether we're going to go forward or not. And all the investors said, we'll do whichever. We'll either sit tight and be just a brewery in Alaska, or we will go outside and build a bigger brew house and try to supply more and let the employees decide. So 17 employees made that decision, and they all voted to go forward. And so that was the way it went. And we put in from a 10-barrel brew house to a 100-barrel brew house. And from then on, it was just keeping up with everything and trying to match the movement that was going on with craft brewing.
I think there was a lot of passion that was being exhibited by not only our investors but also our staff and then our retail partners. You made a comment about the community side of our business, and I think there's no question that community is everything about what we do. We try to put a little bit of Alaska in the bottle and then on the bottle. So the images that we have are many times of people in the environment. So a fisherman on a fishing boat in Idaho Inlet is all about what Alaskan amber epitomizes. It's the place and the people in the place.
Now, you brought up Alaskan amber. Where did the original recipe come from?
That actually was quite by accident, but it was from the Douglas City Brewing Company. We were researching what to put, pictures and things that we could put in our tasting room when we were first starting up. And I was in the State Historical Library and doing a lot of research in there and came across a whole bunch of advertisements and this and that and the other. But one thing I stumbled across was an article that had been written about a new brewer that had come to brew at Douglas City Brewing Company, and it described the process that he used and what he was going to do, and he was pretty excited about all of that. And the thing that caught our eye was he was doing a cold fermentation of an ale yeast, which was a little unique, but it made total sense when you thought about it because it's cold up here.
Yeah, at that time, there's historical photos where there's icebergs downtown. I mean, it was cold. I mean, Taku Glacier was definitely a lot closer, and the ice field was a lot larger than it is today. So they had some issues and challenges of keeping things warm. So there were some real elements of the environment that affected that beer, much like many styles of beer. And then Marcy Marcy got contacted by a local collector, and he had a whole bunch of memorabilia.
Only 3 days, 3 days after I had given that article to Geoff. 3 days. I can't believe the timing of this. And he had...
No, you finish it. You're the one who...
Yeah, and he had all of the memorabilia and all of the canceled checks and the documentation from the Douglas City Brewing Company. And I was like, oh, really? Could we come see that? And Nick Nichols was his name, and he was just great. He opened it all up to us and let us go through it.
But they had invoices of all the raw materials they were buying. So you could reverse engineer...
To get the recipe.
To get the recipe. So, obviously we don't have the yeast that they had back 100 years ago, but we were able to kind of reconstruct essentially what probably was being consumed
between
from
the
Douglas City Brewing
those
Company back in.
So
and that today is Alaskan Amber.
That today is Alaskan Amber.
And it is still our #1 selling beer.
Is it?
It's amazing.
That's fantastic. So being that this is the 40th year in business, are you guys celebrating a 40th anniversary somehow?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact. There's lots going on this year. It's been fun, lots of little milestones along the way. One was this 6-pack package that's out right now commemorating the original label. We're having a big alumni weekend coming up the beginning of August, and that's all the people that have ever worked with Alaskan Brewing Company at Alaskan Brewing Company come down for a big barbecue and fun time there, and then a lot of different things that are happening coming out as we get closer to our actual start-up date, because we spent this year, 40 years ago, putting the brewery together and getting it all to go, but we actually didn't bottle and release anything until the very end of the year. So this will be in November, December, when we actually have our anniversary, our true anniversary. And there'll be some special things coming out, and you'll get to see them. It's fun.
Yeah.
We can't talk about them yet, but we will.
But a lot of it too is a real thank you, because there's no way we could not have done what we've done without staff, investors obviously, but also retailers, consumers. So it's a real big thank you. This is a pretty amazing thing. 40 years, wow! I don't know where it all went.
But the support we've gotten, it hasn't been us. It's been the entire state.
It's gone fast, hasn't it?
And 40 years zooms.
Awfully fast.
It does.
Well, happy anniversary, happy 40th anniversary.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming in. And again, Alaskan Brewery, 40 years this year, and there's some new stuff coming out. Yeah,
Yep.
Stay
tuned.
exciting.
Stay tuned.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. We'll keep you posted, definitely.
Right.
That was Geoff and Marcy Larson speaking with KTOO's Mike Lane to tell their story of the Alaskan Brewing Company, which is celebrating 40 years in operation this year. This is Juneau Afternoon on KTOO. Support for Juneau Afternoon comes from Tongass Federal Credit Union, a member-owned financial cooperative offering checking and savings accounts, loans, and digital financial services. In Juneau at 8585 Old Dairy Road in the K Plaza and at tongassfcu.com. Federally insured by NCUA.
Support from Hanson Gress, seeking curious people who like technology, network engineering, and customer support. Opportunities for those who thrive on problem solving. Details at hansongress.com/careers.
This is Juneau Afternoon from your listener-supported public media station KTOO. I'm your host, Boston Christopher. Joyce Parry-Moore is a writer, voice and life coach, educator, and ordained priest whose work centers voice as a force for healing, liberation, and change. Joyce is the founder and former artistic director of Opera to Go here in Juneau and worked for a number of years as a company member at Perseverance Theater. She has a new book, Fill the Room, an invitation to take up space, and will be in Juneau on August 7th for a special book event with readings and activities. It will be at McFeeters Hall from 6:30 to 8 p.m. on Friday, August 7th. You can visit her website, joyceparrymore.com, or you can just listen to our interview, which is happy to be taking place right now. Joyce, welcome in. Gunnath Cheese for being here. Wasiiti, how are you down there in Washington State?
Thank you. Salamat po.
Absolutely.
It's so good to see and hear you again, Boston. It's not been 40 years for us, but I think we identified that it's been 30 years. Since
It's been a long time since we saw each other in person, but I remember you and your husband and all of those things when I first visited Juneau in 1991 as a young UAA student doing a show there at Perseverance, and seen you in many, many productions over the years. But now you're a life coach and you do all kinds of things. You went and became a priest.
All the things, I know, so crazy. Well, it was so great to hear Dr. Aparna Palmer talk about all the exciting things at UAS, especially the Arctic education. Opera to Go, the last production that I did with them as artistic director was in Kotzebue. We did a production called The Arctic Magic Flute, and that was really a life's work. And in a way, that sort of then continued me onto another path of adventure to go to seminary, went down to Berkeley and became ordained in the Episcopal tradition. And I went on to get my doctorate too. So actually, I'm the Reverend Doctor. Joyce
Reverend Doctor. Okay.
I know. Pretty serious.
That's cool. But voice has always been part of your work, obviously as a trained opera singer, as an actor, and then, sort of becoming a priest, you use your voice as well. But then as a priest, you're also sort of helping others, right, to find their voice. And so this seems like a natural path to then becoming sort of a vocal life coach. So what made you... What was the decision point for you to go into that work in terms of helping others?
In terms of the voice, it was a full circle moment. I believe that life is on a spiral, but more like a spiral staircase. We seem to go back to the same places, but we're not the same person we were when we were at that place. We now live in Bellingham. We've moved back here after I retired as a parish priest. And I started this business after I wrote the book. The book was swirling around in my head. I've noticed in many, many circumstances, whether it's working with people of color, LGBTQI folks, women, feminists, people with different abilities, that so many voices are being silenced. And right now, in this period of time in history, I believed that we really needed those voices to step forward. One of the metaphors that came out of this journey for me, being a singer in a choir, if you've ever sung in a choir, there's an emphasis on blending. And blending is fine. If you see my cousin Vinny, you blend. But it's also a kind of a colonizing aspect about that. Yeah. In a choir, especially a very well-paid choir with little white robes, oftentimes the women are supposed to sound like little English choir boys, and we're not that. So how do we develop our own unique voice? There's one of my favorite authors is named Aparna Palmer. He's an educator of educators, and he talks about the fact that the word vocation, or the idea of calling, it all comes out of the same root as voice. Or voice means more than singing, even more than speaking. You can have a voice in your writing. You can also have a voice in your teaching or your legislating or whatever it is you are called to do, to make a positive change in yourself and in your community. So that got me to thinking, and that was sort of the impetus for the book. And I worked with a wonderful group called the Tehom Publishing Center, and it works exclusively with feminist, BIPOC. There we are. Look at that. With feminist, BIPOC, and queer authors to elevate, to amplify those voices in the world. And in my book and my work, I do that somewhat literally with people. Voice is so fascinating. We're right now communicating with our voices, Boston, and our voices disturb the air. I love the feeling of that, of the vibrations going out, and they literally make change. They go into someone's bones and their ears, and they impact someone physically, somatically, kinesthetically. And I think that we can do that in our communities, whether we do it through singing or speaking or whatever it is that you feel called to do. So this book has 3 movements because I am a musician after all. And the first one is about rediscovering your voice, because we can often forget what our voice is. We get so busy with the hustle culture, trying to produce what we think someone else wants, rather than really being aware of what our voice is and what we're called to do. So there's that. Then there's the movement of the book that talks about developing and healing. Oftentimes, folks in those historically marginalized populations can be wounded. I've experienced that myself, and I'm white. I'm a white older woman, and I'm straight. So in all those intersectionalities, people can be wounded and their voices can be hurt. So how do we recover those voices and make them strong again? And then in the third movement, how do we use those voices in solidarity with other like-hearted creatures, with other like-hearted humans, to make a positive change? And that's exciting too. If you've ever, going back to the choir metaphor, if you're singing together, if you're singing the same vowel sound, the same word, the sound that you make is exponentially increased by the fact that you're doing it in solidarity with others. So my work as a community organizer when I lived in the Bay Area is part of this book too. So I guess the gift of being able to live long and be in many places and do many things is that I get to come all the way full circle. And Juneau just has such a huge piece of my heart. That's where my heart blossomed at Perseverance Theater with Amali Smith, and also starting Opera to Go. I loved that story about Alaska Brewing because it's very true. I started off very naive. There's so much that I didn't know that I didn't know. And that gave me, in some ways, the courage to take a production all the way up to Kotzebue. It was so crazy. I look back at that and I go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
Well, that's one of the great things about, I feel one of the great things about Alaska is that if you have an idea, you can usually make it happen, and naivete can actually be a really cool thing because you don't get blocked, right?
Exactly right.
And we're talking about voice and, having a voice. And I know this isn't just for performers per se. This is for anyone in their daily life, right? Anybody can gain value from this because there's a lot of places where I love how you the subtitle of this, an invitation to take up space, right? Because oftentimes, and I know in some of the materials, it talks about you're often told to be quiet or when you should speak or when the right time to bring your voice forward is. And a lot of times, there may be a thing that you want to say, but you don't feel like you have the right to say it, but you really do.
Exactly. Yeah, I've been teaching voice here at Western Washington University, and some of my students, many of them are neurodiverse, BIPOC, queer students, and they talk about you begin after a while to self-censor because you're so accustomed to not being listened to. Or you may be skipped over. You may say one thing in a room and then it's not listened to, and then two voices down the road, someone else, generally in a different demographic, will say the same thing and then get acknowledged for it. So that's a pretty common experience. If you go into a room with any marginalized folks, you'll see the hands shoot up. Yes, I've experienced that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when I taught voice there in Juneau, that's when I first started teaching voice, and I've been teaching voice all through my life. Even when I was in seminary, I would, right around Easter time, I'd get a lot of people that would come to me like, oh my gosh, I'm going to chant this big thing. But when I taught voice in Juneau, I had a lot of high schoolers. That was great. Then I had a lot of middle-aged women, honestly, that came to me, and they just wanted to have stronger voices. And I found that when they took a lesson and when they discovered the power that they had in their voice and their body, they would make big changes in their lives. I was sometimes a little weird. They would go out and change their career or, buy a piano or get divorced, So I was like, whoa, there's something here. There is something. And I wasn't.
There's power, right? There's power.
There is power. And it really made me, that's what made me seek other degrees. So I have my degree in divinity, not fudge, but another kind. And then I got my doctorate in pastoral counseling because I'm very interested in mental health care and in healing trauma. A lot of this book takes a very trauma-informed viewpoint because trauma happens to us all the time, especially people who are in marginalized populations.
You're listening to Juneau Afternoon. We're talking with Joyce Parry-Moore about her new book, Fill the Room, an invitation to take up space. Joyce will be in Juneau on August 7th for a special book event with readings and activities. Tell me a little bit about what we're going to be experiencing during this book event.
Thank you so much. Well, the book itself has a combination of some stories from my life. Some of the stories are actually from Juneau or from Alaska. Also stories from students that I've had over the years who, while one of them became a singer, but others did not, but they still used what they learned in their lives. So they tell stories in there. And then there are sort of prompts for self-reflection throughout it. And so in the book event, there will be readings. I'll do a little reading. I could read a little for you today if we have time.
Oh, please, yes.
There'll be a reading. At least one of the story contributors lives in Juneau, and I'm hoping they'll be able to be there that night and share part of their story. And then we'll do other fun, creative things to break out of our boxes. We're often in these little boxes, right? Like that song in Weeds. So we stay in these boxes. We don't know how to get out of them. So we'll do dance breaks. We'll do some journaling. We'll just do some exercises together to just kind of bust out a little bit. And we'll do some singing together too. So it's going to be fun. Hopefully, my hope is that someone will leave a little more empowered from the event than they arrived.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear a little something from the book. That would be great.
Okay, I would love that. Well, this is just from the very introduction, and it starts with a quote by Polly Murray. If you don't know who they were the first transgendered Episcopal priest. Before that, they were a very well-known civil rights attorney. In fact, they laid some of the foundations of the civil rights movement in our country. And they said, one person plus one typewriter constitutes a movement. So we're just trying to start a movement, Boston. That's all we're doing. We're just starting a movement. It was time. It was time. After years and years of gritting her teeth, pressing her lips together, of playing small and fitting in, of stepping back, taking the high road, not making too much noise or upsetting anyone or taking up too much space, of swallowing insults and enduring injuries to herself and to others, years of apologizing like it was her job, of deprecating herself into acceptable oblivion, of shrinking into corners or seeking some small spot at the table where she would try on occasion to be heard, only to find herself ignored, overlooked, invisible. After all that, she'd had enough, more than enough. She said when she could still hear the the voices of those who had come to her over the years of her life, seeking health and encouragement, seeking their truth and their path. She would go out to them. She would stretch her own voice, her words, her love and light, and connect with a much broader community, with those whose voices had, like hers, been silenced and stymied. Together they would create another movement, one that could break down walls of colonialism and oppression, that would release and empower so many voices that a shift might truly become possible, a shift in vibration, in values, in power, in the spaces where decisions were made and stories were told. Together they would fill those spaces unapologetically with integrity and confidence. But first, she had to get out of bed.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask you, like, in terms of, if you're out, if somebody's listening and they are saying, yeah, I need to find my voice, I need to do something. And it feels like, what is one of the first things that you would counsel them in terms of, obviously, get out of bed, right? Like, that's the first thing to do.
That's a good step.
That's the first good step, is to get out of bed. But in terms of, like, how do you recognize that you maybe need to find your voice, to find that inner healing for yourself? And then what would be that first step, besides buying the book, of course?
Yeah, buying the book, working with a coach, all that great stuff. But I think it's interesting to know that, I've mentioned a little bit about trauma. Our vagus nerve runs right between our vocal cords. So when you're talking or singing, humming, when you're making noise, you're literally calming down your central nervous system, telling it, you're safe. You got this. You're safe. There's a line in Gypsy where she says, sing out, Louise. And that's what I'm always telling people. You have to make some noise first so that you can hear your own voice. And remember yourself. I think storytelling is really important, whether you do that between people, which is my favorite thing to do, tell stories and listen to stories, but also writing stories. And for those of you who come to the event at McFeeters, I'll also, if you give me your email address, I will email you a journal that goes with the book so that you can use those prompts to do some introspection and to think about what were the times that made you come alive. There's a quote by someone named Howard Thurman who says that we have to do what makes us come alive, that the world needs more people who are alive. So remembering what that was, and then following that calling, whatever it is, and having other people around you and a support team. I used to run the Klondike Road Relay back in the day, and it was so great to have your support vehicle. So who's in your support vehicle on this journey is something that we can think about together.
I love that. And it's interesting because I have a lot of guests on the show, and they a lot of people will say, oh, I don't like the sound of my voice, I don't want to hear myself, because the headphones, I tell them optionally they can wear the headphones or not. And I say, if you like the sound of your own voice, right? And so many people are like, oh, no, I'm going to take these off. I don't need to wear them. And it's interesting because we sound so different, right, in terms of that. But so go ahead.
Voice is the only instrument we play from inside the instrument. So when you play the violin, which I used to, you can see it, you can polish it, and you can hear it from the outside. My voice is inside my body. It's very vulnerable. And only when it vibrates, the bones in my body and the things around me, I see behind you, you've got those sound boards to keep it from vibrating too much, right? But that vibration is what we can perceive. We don't so much hear our voice as we feel our voice. And I think it's one of those things that's a really great metaphor for so much in life, I find. So that's why I use that lens in the book.
And how do I fall in love with my own voice?
Oh, Boston, I think you already have.
Oh, I mean, I'm speaking of the one.
I know. How does one
fall in love with their own voice?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think first you have to experience it. That's number one. Experience the feeling of it, the vibration in your body, and the freedom to make a big sound. What would it be like to make a big sound? That's something that a lot of people haven't done. And then coming to terms with that, to say, you've got this power in you. It's like I've got a story called The Lightsaber. We all carry this lightsaber around with us, but we just aren't aware of it. We aren't using it. I think we have fear sometimes of power of any kind. And power itself is not a bad thing. It's the abuse of power that's a bad thing. And that's why I'm trying to encourage everybody to get out their lightsaber and to hone and use their power for good in the world. We desperately need that right now. And I think each person will benefit from that. And I hope that folks that come. So on the 7th, I'll be at McFeeters Hall, which is an important place. Holy Trinity, Juneau is where I started my spiritual journey. And the year before I went to seminary, you'll remember that they burned down. It was a terrible thing, but they have now finally paid off their mortgage and rebuilt McFeeters Hall, of course. And so many arts groups are there. It's a real artistic heart of the community, which is why we're doing the event on the 7th. On the 9th, Holy Trinity is having their own event about the mortgage. And then also, I just shout out to Hearthside, which is carrying the book, and I'm going to do a signing on the 6th down in their downtown store there on the wharf. So you could do both. You could come to the wharf, buy me a piece of pizza from Roma, because I'll be there between 5:30 and 7:30. Pick up a book, chitty chat with me. I'll sign it for you. I have some fun merch, and then you can bring that to McFeeters Hall the next night, and we will all have a great conversation. We'll tell stories together. We will leave more powerfully than we walked in the door.
Joyce Parry-Moore, thank you so much for joining us on Juneau Afternoon today. Her book is called Fill the Room, an invitation to take up space. She'll be at Hearthside on the 6th, and then she'll be at McFeeters Hall on the 7th. And you can find out more about Joyce and all of her activities, as well as, because you not only have the book, there's a podcast that you can also subscribe to for Fill the Room. There's a bunch of episodes of that's available on all the streaming platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can go to joyceparrymore.com for more information. Joyce, it was a pleasure to speak with you.
Austin, so special. How wonderful to reconnect with you. I hope I see you when I'm in town.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Salamat po. Take good care.
Good cheese.
Bye now.
That will do it for today's Juneau Afternoon. Reminder that Juneau Afternoon will be on summer hiatus after this week from July 27th through August 14th. Our live shows will resume on Wednesday, August 19th. We're grateful to you for your continued support. We do have one more show this week. Tomorrow, we talk with climate-aware therapist Sarah Aronson about mental health and climate change. Especially important conversation considering the Geoff release is happening soon. And in the style of Christopher Guest, there's a film called Can Canoe Dig It? It's screening in Juneau soon. We talk with the filmmakers about this mockumentary about freestyle canoeing. Juneau Afternoon airs Wednesday through Friday at 3 p.m. right here on KTOO Juneau and 91.7 Juneau Auk Bay, KAUK. Find the show online at ktoo.org. /Juneau Afternoon, where you can listen to episodes, subscribe to the podcast, offer feedback or suggestions, or find out how to be a guest on the show. You can also find live stream archives on KTOO's YouTube page. Our theme music is by Indian Agent. Programming support for Juneau Afternoon comes from listeners and viewers like you, and Country Financial, Tongass Federal Credit Union, Heritage Coffee Roasting Company, and Hanson Grass. I'm Boston Christopher, producer and host of the program, with help today from Aaron Tripp. Gunath Chish, have a fantastic Thursday.